How you guys doing today? This is Anthony Ganji, host of Tier Talk, only show on the air for law enforcement. Don't forget, guys, follow us multiple venues: iHeartRadio, TuneIn, YouTube, Spreaker.com, Player FM. The list goes on and on. Don't forget, guys, download the app. It's on iOS and Android. And tune in our show every week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find it right on the Tier Talk Live Facebook page. And it's great. You know, we have the interactive discussion. It's great. Okay, so I was looking at some group conversations, and I noticed that one of the groups had a conversation about inmate suicides. And it's a good question. They said, can it be prevented? Now, I don't know if the question came from, it's an open group, so I don't know if the question came from somebody from the public or if the question came from one of our own. Now, I want to give an opinion on that, and it's just too much to write, so I want to kind of just give a vlog, if you will, and just express my thoughts on, can inmate suicides be prevented? So, having said that, in my experience, if the inmate brings attention to it, most likely they're not trying to kill themselves. Most likely they want the attention, which makes it easier for the officer or civilian staff to discover what's going on and then hopefully do the right thing and, you know, put the inmate on a constant watch. And most likely the inmate may not be out to hurt themselves. They may be out to manipulate some form of a move. You know, we know that happens. And that's when the inmate brings attention to it. And don't forget, guys, we have to act on that, because sometimes in their effort to bring attention, it could fail and they could wind up really hurting themselves. And we've known that, right? We've seen inmates, I mean, there's a superficial cuts, but then we see inmates actually getting hold of a sheet, tying it around their neck, waiting for the officer to come by. And next thing you know, it's just bad. Their act to get attention winds up being something rather, it winds up leading to a very negative outcome. And again, it could be just because they wanted to manipulate a move, get out of the housing unit, whatnot. But then there are times where there are no indicators, okay? And we know that, okay? And inmates that want to really kill themselves, you know, we really rely on staff with just experienced intuition, you know, because let's be honest here, okay? Our job is defined by routine, correct? I mean, we could have some spontaneity within that routine. Like, we know we have to tour every half an hour to an hour, and we know the set tours definitely for mandatory counts are going to be at these set times. But having said that, we also can be a little bit spontaneous within when we do our other tours. We don't always have to be exactly on these set times, and that's good, you know, outside of mandatory counts. And that's good, right? Because that keeps the inmates on their toes. You become less predictable. But having said that, there's still a routine. Once you pass an inmate cell and there's no reason for you to kind of remain looking in, the inmate knows there's going to be a good amount of time before you're able to come back. And that's because, again, you're tied up doing other things, doing the rest of the cell check, rest of the tour, or maybe you go back and there's, you know, paperwork you have to fill out at the desk. And that's another thing. The unit is definitely vulnerable when you have one officer working the floor and they get tied up, either, you know, open up cells for movement, preparing for their count, you know, doing their security searches, you know. So, I mean, there's a lot of times where we don't have that direct eye on that inmate that's vulnerable that we don't know about, okay, again, because the person hasn't given us any sign. Okay, so most of the time, in my opinion, when you catch a suicide that really was meant to be a suicide, not meant as a attention getter, sometimes it's that experience, intuition from staff who walks by and just knows this inmate and knows that something's just not right today with this guy or this female. You know what, let me go back. You know, and it's just that chance that when they go back, they surprise the inmate and then the inmate gets caught and they wind up calling the code and preventing it. Sometimes it's just the luck. It just happens to be luck. Maybe just not well planned by the inmate that wanted to do it, just not well planned, and you happen to be doing a tour just at that time when the person was doing it. Or, you know, just something in you just decides to get up again and do another tour and it surprises the inmate and then you catch it. Either way, you know, it's very hard to catch. That's the point I'm trying to get across. And it doesn't mean that the officers are not doing their job. It just means that the inmate was able to circumvent the routine of the officer, or just was able to circumvent the system. The inmate had a game plan, wanted to kill themselves, and this is how they did it. And we do have preventive measures. And what I mean by preventive measures is that if an inmate does off themselves to some extent, we learn from that, and we try to make sure that we don't present that same opportunity again. Like with the Bland case out in Texas, and she hung herself with a garbage bag. Everybody's or liner of a garbage can, a garbage bag. We look at the situation and we learn from it. Some people be like, oh my God, I can't believe she's allowed to have that. Yeah, but you know what though? Having said that, we only know because she utilized it how dangerous it could be. Because she utilized it in that manner of how dangerous it could be. So then yes, now we have to act. We have to act and say, you know what, we can't do this anymore because now we know. But you got to realize something. When someone goes to kill themselves, their mindset is different than the officer walking down the wing. The officer will take his experience and realize that these things are security threats, security issues. But there are a lot of things that could just surface. It's part of the evolution of corrections that we just may not thought in that manner to be utilized that way because we have a normal mindset. But when you're depressed and you're in your cell, you could think of millions of ways to kill yourself that would not be fathomable to the officer on shift. But don't get me wrong, once they learn of this method, then the officer does what they can, or the facility does what they can to prevent that from happening again. It's the evolution, it's of what we do. So again, this is just my opinion. Could suicides be prevented? Yes, but it's not a definitive yes. It's not a definitive yes. It's a yes that yes, we could if we eliminate the means. But again, we eliminate the means, inmates become more inventive. It's like survival. You take everything off the island, but people will find a way to survive. Same thing here. You remove their means, inmates are going to find a way to utilize other means. But the preventive method is that we don't make it easier. If we find out that this mean was used, well, then we eliminate that mean. So there is some extent that, yes, it could be prevented. The routine tour, sure. You do it spontaneous, keep the inmates on their toes. But again, it's not a definitive yes because the inmates can circumvent those means. So again, that's just my opinion on this. I think it'll be a great topic to discuss, get your opinions. And I think it would be something that the public needs to hear. Because every time a suicide occurs, we're always the ones that fall. And I disagree with that. I'm not saying we're perfect, but I disagree. You're dealing with people that can be very inventive, and they're not giving enough credit to the inmate who wants to kill themselves and will do what they can to do that. Inmates that don't give signs. Because we'll wind up going back thinking, could we have done something differently? And we have to remember, it's hindsight bias now because we know that the inmate has killed themselves. But if you don't know that, you're still doing your job like you're supposed to be doing. Hey, maybe there were just no signs. And now you can't hold the person responsible because you now know that inmate killed themselves. Well, that officer did not know that at that time. So this would be a great conversation. If you guys want to chime in, feel free to comment. And as always, guys, stay safe, please. And thank you for the comments. Let me just read what Lonnie has to say. Yeah, see, Lonnie's on point. Talks with the inmate. I agree. And that's a good experienced officer. That's an officer that gets a feel. And I want to say something, Lonnie. That's great. That's how you get to know your inmates, know something's wrong. And I agree with those interactions 100%. But remember, the inmates want to kill themselves. It's not going to be able to be picked up in the conversation. But because Lonnie has interacted with them, he knows that, this inmate's not himself. Usually he's talking about this. Usually he's a little bit more happier. Or today he's too happy. Either way, Lonnie's going to have a good baseline, to make a decision. This guy's not himself, and maybe just that extra interaction can prevent that suicide. So I think that's a great comment by Lonnie. So, all right, guys, stay safe, guys. Take care.